Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Gosh, Scooby, I mean Tim, it sure seems spooky out here. Despite a full moon, it's really dark. You could almost expect something really horrifying to jump out at you.
Oh, Tim, stop being so paranoid. You're really on edge. I've never seen you so jumpy. What's gotten into you?
Well, Peter Bernard, our YouTube producer, did say that his arch nemesis Dogman has been frightening hikers and couples trying to get it on in the woods.
Nonsense. Sounds like pure folklore to me. Do you see any dogmen lurking about? Come on.
You mean like the one that's been following us for the last 5 minutes?
Well, I hadn't noticed it until you pointed it out. But you can't be so afraid of sharp teeth and long claws. But maybe you're right. I guess we should get back to the safety of the KCOR studio and beat it out of here. Our guest tonight is an expert on monsters. We should have asked him in advance how to protect ourselves against Dogman. Oh, I wish he'd stop wagging that tail. It doesn't seem too friendly.
Oh, it's never too late. I'll see you there.
Oh!
Did you make it back to him? He did it. It's now just the... Oh,
well,
okay.
I've made it back, but my ears have been clipped a little. And my dog biscuits are missing.
Your Scooby snacks?
I don't know. I don't know what happened to him. I was carrying him, and then there was this hot breath on my neck, and I had a fight to get back here on the strip. Las Vegas, you're always safe there, right?
If you stay out of the strip and more along where our studios are.
Well, there you go.
Nice and quiet out here.
Indeed. Well, we're back, and I think the show should begin now that we've left Dogman behind. Although he could pop up at any time during the next hour, I would guess.
Yeah, well, that's a good possibility, and probably wants to meet our guest, Jason Offutt. Now, Jason is a returning guest on our show, and it's been a while, and always happy to have Jason, on to talk to us, because I mean he has done so many things. I mean, he's written some absolutely fantastic books. He's made epic beer runs, and just all in all, a really interesting guest. Now, Jason grew up on a farm near the little town of Orrick, Missouri, and in his life, he's been a farmhand, a journalist, a photographer, a bartender, and a mayor of that very same small town. Now, Jason teaches journalism at Northwest Missouri State University in Maryville and keeps the world safe from the forces of evil. Now, Jason says that he was a nerd as a kid and looked for Sasquatch footprints in his yard, UFOs over the farmhouse, and he even says that one night his whole family saw something that couldn't have been in the sky. And one afternoon, he says that he saw a full-bodied apparition that stared at him through hollow eyes. Now, Jason is the author of such books as Paranormal Missouri, Show Me Your Monsters, Darkness Walks, The Shadow People Among Us, What Lurks Beyond the Paranormal in Your Backyard, How to Kill Monsters Using Common Household Items, and his most recent book, Chasing American Monsters, 250 Creatures, Cryptids, and Hairy Beasts. So, Jason, welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre.
Thank you for having me back. I'm sorry, I was off setting a trap for old Mr. Jenkins.
You know, show me, show me, show me your monster. Monster sounds almost X-rated. I don't know.
I wasn't going there. If we're going there tonight, I'm gonna have to take a deep breath and dive right in.
Well,
No, we're not. We're not
we
afraid
had
of
a,
that.
we had a hairy a werewolf in one of our movies, Driller. So we take it as they come, I so to speak. Anyway, hey, I see you. So you had UFO sighting when you were a youngster. Let's get excuse the expression, get off the ground with that one, and tell us a little bit about it and how it led to your interest in all these other unusual things. I mean, going back to, I suppose, when you were younger, the connection between Bigfoot and UFOs was tenuous, if it existed at all, and now a lot of people seem to kind of lump it together. So anyway, take us back to yonder years, and when and where did all this happen?
Well, I would have been about 15 years old, so it would have been 1980. Yeah, it would have been 1980, and it was on it was on the farm. Yeah, one of the great things about growing up out in the middle of nowhere is that on a summer evening, you can go out in the darkness and you can see stars forever. And I would spend lots of time looking up in the stars. I actually knew a whole ton of constellations at that point. Can't remember most of them now. But yeah, I used to spend a lot of time looking at the sky. But this didn't start with me. It was with my dad, and he had been. Actually, this was probably not in the summer. This was probably in the spring, because I think he was out all night planning. It was about 10 o'clock when he got home, and Mom and I heard his truck pull in and shut off, and he didn't come in the house. And he didn't come in the house, and he didn't come in the house. And finally, Mom was like, go check on your dad. So if it had been the dog man outside who'd eaten my father, Mom was just making sure that it wasn't her to get eaten next. She sent me out. And he was just standing at the side of his pickup, leaning on his pickup, and he was looking just out in the sky. And I walked over to him, and I thought he was looking at the house across the field. We had our closest neighbor was about 3/4 of a mile away, across a farm field. But he wasn't. He was looking up in the sky, and he said, "Hey, Jason, look at that over the field. Do you see that?" And I stood there, and I looked, and yeah, I saw it. It was a black spot. It was like somebody taking a hole punch and punched a hole in the sky. It was just a big black circle. And I'm like, "Oh wow, what do you think that is?" Of course, he was like, "I don't know." But it also made a noise, and it was a humming noise. And we stood there for a while, and finally Mom came out, and she saw it as well. And a little bit after that, the phone rang. And of course, back then, all the phones were connected to walls. So I went in to answer the phone, and the neighbor across the field, it was him. And he's like, "Hey, do you see that black thing in the sky hovering over the field?" So it wasn't just us, it was him who saw that too. And Mom went in the house, and I just stood out there with Dad for a while. And eventually the thing got smaller and smaller and smaller until it disappeared. Yeah, no clue what that was, but I would say that's unidentified.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, it seems like today there was a photograph similar to that in the newspaper, and they were calling it a black hole in space. I remember years ago we were told that there had been a little UFO conference in one of the state parks in Arizona, and someone told us to go out to the desert, like around midnight, and this big object was almost guaranteed to come over, and it was going to be shaped like a donut. that was kind of like Maury Island back there in Washington State back in 1947. And there have been a few objects like that. I remember one even over New York that somebody took a picture of, but it's kind of a rarity when you compare it to the discs and the pie pans and the lights in the sky. Were there other reports around the same time? I mean, did anything get in the paper or?
Oh no, there wasn't anything in the paper. We were about an hour drive at that point from the nearest big town, which was Kansas City, Missouri. We had a few smaller papers in the area, but they didn't cover anything like that. But it could have been a disc. I mean, it was a round hole. But I mean, I call it a hole just because it was black. It could have been a disc. A disc out there. It was blanking out the stars. It was hiding the stars from us.
When it disappeared, did it go straight up or just disappear like somebody shut off the lights?
No, I said disappear. I probably shouldn't have done that. It got smaller. I had the impression that it was going up, just going straight up, because it kept getting smaller and smaller until it was gone.
So that happened when you were about 15. How did that lead to your interest in monsters?
Well, it's that actually didn't. I was interested in everything before that. I had gobbled up everything I could get, any books I could get on UFOs, on Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, ghosts. I'd already read Chariots of the Gods and gosh, the second book Eric von Daniken had written. I was already familiar with all that. That was just some justification to me that, hey, I haven't been wasting my time like my parents said. But
didn't all our parents say that? My mother, I think, at some point said I should get a job on the assembly line. I think it was Ford or something that had a plant there. Well, they're long since out of business, and I've been maintaining my image as a gentleman publisher since 1965, and I think we're up to about 307 books there on Amazon, Tim, including the one we just put up today on how to make friends with your familiar. So I guess you could have maybe you could have Bigfoot as a familiar. Yeah. Did you come across any of these footprints, giant footprints in the soil?
No, I looked for them, and what spurred me on was a number of years before I saw the object in the sky. I've always been a voracious reader, and my parents got the Kansas City Times, which was the newspaper, and they always read it. So I started looking through to see if any headlines grabbed me when I was like 7 years old, and one did, and it was about an enormous, hairy, man-like creature that
Momo?
was witnessed at Louisiana, Missouri, which was Momo, the Missouri Monster.
We're going to have a fellow on in a couple of weeks who's just written a book on Momo. Well, I remember when that case broke, because there was a fellow by the name of Hayden Hughes, who I think was one of the original investigators, and he just passed away, I think, a year or so ago. He was just like us, pretty much maybe in his early 20s. What year was that?
I think it was 71 or 72 when that happened.
And tell us a little bit about Momo. Wasn't he a three-toed creature?
Right. Yeah. I want to talk about the three-toed here in a minute, but the Momo case, I think it was in 71 was the first the first sighting of him, and two young girls, not young girls, young women were having a picnic just outside of town in a picnic area, and they smelled something. It smelled like a family of skunks that was nearby, and they were like, okay, we should probably get out of here. And all of a sudden, they saw at the tree line, because they were in a grassy area, a little park, and they saw at the tree line this about 7 to 8 foot tall, extremely hairy, man-like beast standing there staring at them. And, of course, they did what any normal people would do. They screamed and ran. And they got into their car and shut the door, and then realized, oh, no, their purses were left on the picnic blanket.
Oh, boy.
So they didn't have keys, and the monster walked up to them. When he walked up to him and he like put his face on the glass. I mean, I can only imagine the screams that were going on. And eventually it walked away, and they were brave enough to go out and get their purses, and the driver put her keys in and went and they went and reported this. The next encounter wasn't for another year, and there were
it was that long, huh?
Yeah, it was the first one was in 71, and then the other ones were in 72. A 16-year-old girl was washing dishes in her parents' kitchen. They were gone, and her brothers were playing outside, and she just happened to look out and saw that there was something, the same description. It was a huge hairy creature. The hair on its head was pretty much covering its face. And again, it was human shaped, and it was staring at her little brothers. And she ran outside and screamed, and her brothers turned and saw the monster, and they ran into the house. And so they didn't have that kind of encounter, that the monster was that close, but still it was terrifying. And when the monster ran off, they noticed that it had a dead dog under its arm. It was carrying this dead, bloody dog. And there had been a farmer not too far away from this house that was missing his dog. He couldn't find it. There were other encounters, and there were, they went out on hunting parties to find it and never could. But you're right with the three-toed footprint. I find this bizarre because, most of the footprints, and there have been some great casts made of footprints that are just enormous human-like footprints. But these had 3 toes, and it wasn't like it was a deformed foot with 3 toes. It was a foot that had 3 toes. And this is, okay, we've got Momo in Missouri. We've got the folk monster down in Arkansas, which is the legend of Boggy Creek. And then we've got the Honey Island swamp monster down in Louisiana. So all the way down the Mississippi, we've got 3 reports of 3 different, almost identical monsters, all that have 3-toed footprints. So, I mean, I've wondered for a while if maybe it's the same monster that has been, just migrates back and forth.
Kind of like a tramp, except he's not on a train.
Right, and doesn't have the stick with the handkerchief across the shoulder.
Yeah, backpack and all, right? Yeah.
Yeah, probably the same family of monsters. Yeah.
Well, and animals travel along waterways, so that wouldn't be too far of a stretch, I'd think.
Now, did you go out hunting, Momo? I mean, not hunting with a gun, but looking for him.
When I was a kid, and this gave me validation. I liked monsters, and all of a sudden, the newspaper was printing stories about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And I would, like I said, I was only about 7 at the time, and I would, pack a bag with some sandwiches and bottle of soda pop and a notebook and pencils, and I would go out in the cornfields for hours and hours and hours looking for Bigfoot prints, and I never could find him, and my mom was never happy with me when I did this.
Well, good thing there wasn't a corn man. We haven't come across maybe there is a corn man out there.
There might be. We got the Ohio grass man. There might be a corn man.
That's right. And then isn't there a giant sheep or something too wandering around? I think. And in Tim's neck of the woods, there's some kind of what kind of creature is that's wandering out there?
Oh, well, I mean, naturally, I mean, we've got the same kind of hairy cryptids, but I mean, we also have the lake Manitou monster, which is a Loch
But
Ness
I'm
type
thinking,
monster.
the about the one that you wrote up for one of our books. Goes back 100 years or so.
Oh my gosh! Well,
French name. French name.
oh well, there's the loup garous of old Vincennes.
Of course, that's what I meant. You know that all along.
Yeah, the werewolves. Yeah, the Loup
Werewolves,
Garou.
right?
Yes.
Well, I mean, Vincennes was, French occupied from, I mean, like the 1600s. So naturally, they would have brought their, traditions and folklores and mythologies with them.
Well, and in researching the book, that's what I discovered. I actually talk about it in in the introduction to the book, is that a lot of these creatures, when people moved from Ireland, they didn't just bring food with them to survive the trip. They didn't just bring a few heirlooms. They brought banshees, because there are banshee accounts here in America. When the Cornish miners from Cornwall, England, were brought over to mine in Pennsylvania and the gold mines in California, they brought with them the Tommy knockers, and the loup garou as well with the French. So when people come, they bring the beast with them, which is absolutely fascinating to me.
That is, and it makes me wonder, when you have unique cases, say like the, Point Pleasant Mothman, it makes you wonder whether or not there is some kind of, like old European heritage. I mean, of course, people have looked into the Native American lores of that area, but, now you've got me wondering, and we should look into that to see if there's any kind of connection.
Right, and there are two different things that cross my mind about this. One, they somehow brought their monsters and their beast with them, or there are old entities out there, elemental type entities. Maybe when the legends are being passed down from grandfather to father to grandson and so on, maybe these elemental type entities are taking the guise of these old monsters that are talked about so much.
Oh, that's a good point. Listening in, taking notes.
Right. You talk about something enough, a tulpa is going to show up every now and again.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's Tim. That's reminiscent of my book about Jeff the Talking Mongoose.
Well, boy,
I love the talking mongoose.
Oh,
Jeff the talking mongoose.
Right.
That's one of our favorites. We just came out with a book that contains the original manuscript by Harry Price, who investigated that back what was in the mid 1930s, I think.
Yeah, it was, early to middle 1930s. And Tim, we're going to have to interrupt this conversation because we are coming up to our bottom of the hour break. So when we come back, we will continue our conversation with Jason Offutt, talking about chasing American monsters on Exploring the Bizarre.
Well, Jeff will keep me company in the meantime.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
And welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. I'm Tim Swartz. Tonight we're talking with Jason Offutt. And Jason, in your latest book, Chasing American Monsters, I mean, you have, what did I say here? Like, over 250 creatures, cryptids and hairy beasts from, all the states, it looks like. And, okay, just taking, for example, Missouri, some of the amazing cryptids that have been reported there, like the space penguins. Now, don't you wish, when you were a kid, you had the opportunity to look into those cases, and now here you are as an adult being able to do that.
I know. I mean, the fun ones happened before, before I could do anything about it.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah, I just would have loved to have covered the space penguins, but I was
Well,
2 years old.
What are they?
Well, this was in 1967 on Valentine's Day. There was a farmer. His name was Claude Edwards, who walked outside of his farmhouse, and he noticed that there was a large metal green mushroom sitting in one of his fields. And so he walked out to take a look at it. And when he got close, he saw that there were a number of creatures milling around the base of this mushroom. And they were about 3 feet tall, green, and they looked like waddling penguins. The eyes,
geez, that's wild.
That is. And the eyes were large and black. And I mean, I think about what people do.
You sure he wasn't chewing on that mushroom?
Well, it might have broken a tooth. It was metal.
Metal. Yeah, well, that's what they all say at first. Well, we interviewed a fellow there in Scotland who had a really dramatic UFO sighting, and these ball-bearing type objects rolled out from underneath the craft and attacked him and ripped his pants. And the skeptics said, well, he was hallucinating because he had a handful of wild berries. So we got mushrooms and berries and dancing green penguins.
No, what we have mainly is excuses. It's not the mushrooms. It's not the berries. They're actually penguins. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I always thought penguins were a little smarter than we get. They must have been the penguin from Batman, I would guess. Well, okay.
Yeah, Burgess Meredith. They all looked like Burgess Meredith. Yes.
Would you say that that's the most peculiar cryptid, if you could even put it in that category, that you've heard of, or are there cases that are even stranger than that?
Well, when it comes, they're always, no matter how strange you get, the world one-ups you, and there's even stranger ones. But with this, I mean, okay, the end of the story is, I mean, I would have went back, gone back to my house, maybe gotten a shotgun or a camera or something. But this guy picked up rocks and started throwing them at the penguins, and they bounced off what was basically a force shield and invisible one, like on Star Trek. And the penguins noticed him and turned around and got back into the giant metallic mushroom and took off into the air. The thing that really hits me on this is the description of the penguins. 3 feet tall. I mean, the color's irrelevant. They were green, but that's kind of irrelevant. They were 3 feet tall and had really large black eyes. And with a lot of classic abduction encounters, a lot of times the people will report, well, I found myself outside and there were these really large rabbits with big black eyes, or there were these deer with big black eyes, or there were these really large owls, but they had these
owls.
big
I was
black
just going to say,
eyes.
You got to throw in a couple of owls there.
Got to throw in the owls. So, I mean, with this encounter, I'm just speculating, of course, with this is if this guy really saw that and wasn't chewing on the magic mushroom, maybe this was a stereotypical type gray encounter, and they just put into his head what he thought was the most adorable and least dangerous creature he could think of, which would be a penguin. They're pretty adorable.
Yeah. Well, now, how do you what do you make of? We were making light of this earlier, but what do you make of these cases that have crept upon us recently of this dog man who has the body of Arnold Schwarzenegger in the face of a bulldog?
Well, I mean, on the surface, I'm like, really? it's a big dog. It's a dog. It's got a dog's head and sort of a hairy human torso, but it's really muscular. But the people I've talked with who've had these encounters have been pretty convincing, and the one that convinced me the most that there is something to this, beside the fact that there are Native American stories about these, the story that really got me was a friend of mine talked to me about it. And I mean, this is a guy I trust. And I mean, he wasn't lying to me. He was serious and kind of scared when he told me this story. But he and a friend liked to go to this cemetery in mid Missouri. It's off a rural highway on a dirt road that goes down a couple of hills, and this cemetery sits up on a hill, and it's really inviting because there's a big wooden cross somebody set fire to at one point, so it's nice and charred. But the cemetery does some weird things, like he's mapped it before, and the next time he's gone back, the tombstones and trees have been in different positions. He's done that more than once. But he and his another buddy were there, and nothing was really going on, so they decided to leave around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And it was warm. It was in the summer, so they had their windows rolled down. And they went down one of the hills, and there was a dog in the middle of the dirt road. It was like it was eating like roadkill. And they stopped about 20 feet from it, and they could smell wet dog coming through the window. And, that's an awful smell. And they got tired of waiting for it to move, so the driver honked his horn. And this thing turned its head toward them, and its eyes glowed yellow in the headlights. And all of a sudden, it stood up, and it was about 6 feet tall, and it was on its hind legs, and it stared them down as it walked to the side of the road and disappeared into the trees. Of course, at that point, they rolled up their windows, locked the door, and got the hell out of there. But they saw this dog stand on two legs and give them the eye as it walked off the road.
Mm-hmm. Did they say, was it did it appear to be a normal sized dog at first?
It was it was just, they said it would, or he said that it was a big dog, but it wasn't out of the realm of the size a dog should be.
Mm-hmm. Until it stood up.
Until it stood up, and then it was enormous.
Oh my God, that's well, and at one time, I mean, before I think the Dogman meme kind of became popular, people would say, "Oh, well, that was a werewolf. You saw a werewolf."
Well, but I mean, thinking about werewolves or dogs that stand on their hind legs, which one's a little bit more believable?
I'll stick with Bigfoot. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Now, from the research, Jason, that you did for Chasing American Monsters, was there any particular cryptid that seemed to be consistent, no matter where you would go? I mean, one side of the country to the other, you're going to find stories involving the same kind of creature.
Wow. No. There. Close-ended question. No.
No.
I mean, because a lot. Okay, let's go. Let's just stick with Bigfoots for a second. A
Sure.
lot of the Bigfoot encounters are of the same type of creature. Anything between like 6 and 9 feet tall, probably about 500 to 800 pounds, hairy, ape-like, and walks like a man.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, there are similar ones that the thing has a human-like face. It's a lot more human than ape. And then we've got the Michalak skunk ape down in Florida that looks more like an orangutan. And then we've got other ones that are tall and skinny in New Hampshire. And then we've got some that look more like chimpanzees. So they do have this variation, but there's a lot of encounters with each one of them. So the individual types, species, variations, whatever you want to call them, are fairly consistent.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that here in Indiana, you had two water creatures listed. You had the Ohio River gill man, and then the beast of Busco. Or Busco, I can never remember how it's pronounced. And I've been to the pond where the giant turtle supposedly was, and it's not a big pond. So if there was a turtle there of that size, I think the reports of that it was as big as a dining room table. That's a big turtle.
Right. Well, it's I mean, later the stories grew, and the shell was as big as the roof of a car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I am really dubious about a lot of water monsters, unless we're talking an ocean. If it's a seagoing monster, I mean, all bets are off there. But if it's a lake monster, I mean, a lake is, if it's a contained lake, somebody would have shot the thing. Somebody would have hauled it in with a net. I don't care how big it is. A steamboat would have run over its head at some point. You know, and there are a lot of different lakes in the United States that are man-made reservoirs that have like big, plesiosaur stories. Yeah, I'm not necessarily buying that, but when you go to the ocean, or even something as big like Lake Champlain, that's a big lake.
Well, I mean, you look at some of these stories that come from, say, like Ireland, where you have these basically they're just nothing more than peat bogs, and but very good reports about people seeing, like strange beasties in these waters. So and of course the speculation there was that these little ponds are so close together that whatever gets in there is able to move from lake to lake. Which that brings me back. We were talking about Momo and some of these other Bigfoot types of creatures. It seems to me that there's the good possibility that some of them probably do travel around using, like rivers and creeks and things like that.
Right, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to again, just animals in general, they use waterways to travel because other animals come to waterways and hey, I can eat that one, and I've got something to drink. So, I mean, I definitely am behind that. But when it comes to, again, just monsters from the water, I'm really dubious over most of them. Like in Oklahoma, there's allegedly a giant octopus that lives in a couple of the lakes in Oklahoma.
Yeah, freshwater octopus. Yeah.
It's a fun story though. I mean, because not every story I put in Chasing American Monsters am I saying this monster exists. No, I was a journalist for 17 years, and for the past 14 years I've taught journalism. So I'm a storyteller. So I tell the stories of a lot of these, or of all of these, but I think there are a number of these in here that I think are 100% true.
When it comes to teaching your classes on journalism, now I know you're not going to teach your kids on how to write about things like this, but
hey, don't be too sure.
Well, okay, that's my question. Was more. It's, do you teach them how to look at stories like this in a journalistic fashion rather than just immediately be skeptical about it? I don't know if I'm framing that question correctly.
Oh, you absolutely are framing it correctly, and.
Okay.
I have. I teach reporting classes, and the students know that I write these books. Hell, the administration knows, and they're okay with it. So good for them. They're good people.
Yeah.
I occasionally offer a class that is called Paranormal Journalism, and in that class, my main goal was to teach these budding young journalists how to write stories about UFOs sightings, about Bigfoot encounters, about a haunting in somebody's house, with the straight face they need when they're covering a city council meeting, if they're covering a hold up at a bank. They need to be able to write that story as seriously as they possibly can. And I got plenty of stories as examples of what not to do, because I mean, if it's a haunting, and somebody's doing a feature piece on this group going in and investigating this haunting, they always reference Ghostbusters. If it's a Bigfoot account, they reference Harry and the Hendersons. If it's a TV show or if it's TV news and they're talking about UFOs, you always hear the X-Files theme song. Right. And all this does, it doesn't matter how the rest of the story goes. Some of the rest of these stories that I use as examples treat the subject seriously. But as soon as they reference pop culture in the lead, it's a joke. The whole thing is treated like a joke. Yeah. So that's what this class does.
I always say here, you watch your typical news broadcast. Now, it's not quite as bad as it used to be, but they always end up, with a smirk on their face and making light of the incident, even if there were credible witnesses involved or 50 people looking up at the sky. They'll still make some comment about somebody out having too many beers on a Saturday night. And I know quite a few people that have had too many beers on a Saturday night. And man, they've never reported a UFO in their life. They had no interest in that. It's just like somebody's imagination where they got to come up with an explanation that's often crazier than what the witnesses say that they've actually observed.
Right. And, I've always found that too many beers on a Saturday night will make you see UFOs. I've had too many beers on a Saturday night, and no, it doesn't.
No, nothing at all. Nor pink elephants. I've never been anybody that.
No pink elephants.
And I hung out with some rock and rollers, man, and these guys would drink, a biker under the table, and well, some of them did have UFO sightings, but it had nothing to do with them drinking. Not whatsoever. And you're more likely to run into maybe a Bigfoot when you've been out in the woods having a couple of marshmallows or a brews or something like that than you are UFOs, because UFOs usually really just kind of sneak up on you. You don't have a chance to grab a beer and say, "Oh, I'm going to go sit on the front porch and watch this thing."
Right? Yeah. But yeah, when it comes back to journalism and the students, every time I teach that class, the kids are absolutely blown away by the amount of evidence for all of the paranormal topics I discuss. And they're also blown away by the fact that, because they always say there's no way I'm going to be able to come up with a good news story every week about these paranormal encounters. Nobody sees this stuff. And then by the end of the semester, they're like, I could write about this the rest of my life, because everybody has a story.
Now, you have a book here, which I find a very intriguing title, How to Kill Monsters Using Common Household Items. What household items do you use?
Well, it really depends on the monsters. Let's go back to the.
Run us through a few. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Let's go to werewolves. One of the things mainly to do with werewolves, because they're covered with hair, so they're really combustible. Keep a lot of open bottles of vodka around the house. I mean, if you're having people over to, your kids are having friends over, the parents might not like that, but tough. You're worried about protecting yourself and your family. So just throw a bottle at a werewolf, start smoking cigars, toss that, boom, the werewolf problem's gone. If you don't have enough time to light the cigar, have a cat. Because a cat is a werewolf distraction device. Just throw it, and the werewolf's going to go after the cat before it goes after you.
Or dirt.
It'll give you plenty of time to light the lighter. Yeah, I covered all sorts of things. I covered clowns. Clowns are evil. Not every clown's evil, but there are a lot of evil clowns out there.
We know that we know about clowns. I mean, John Keel and I, one time we went to see one of our favorite movies, Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
From outer space, so we know,
yes. Yeah, we know that they're aliens disguising themselves as clowns coming here, and the UFOs look like circus tents.
Right. And you know, It. I mean, the book, the first made for TV movie, the movies they came out with now. I've always had a problem with clowns, and people say, Jason, you don't read, you haven't read It, and you don't watch these movies, right? And I'm like, are you kidding? This is a documentary. This is not fiction. This is a true story to teach you how to defeat the clown. But one of my suggestions in the book is make sure you got a lot of tin pie plates. Okay, fill it full of concrete, because a clown cannot resist a pie to the face. They come into your house, you pick up the pie tin, they want a pie to the face. Full of concrete, you're done with your clown infestation.
Good point. Good point.
By the way, this is a parody book, parody survival guide. Please do not hit a clown in the face with a concrete pie. Okay, listeners, please do not do that.
Now, well, at least not one made out of concrete. I would assume. Yeah, use the cotton candy like in the movie. You just twirl it around your favorite alien clown, and the world will be safe again. Anyway, you know what? We're hitting towards the end of the program here, and we should provide a minute or two here for our guests to tell people where they can find him on the internet and where to get these great books, because each one of them sounds better than the next.
Oh, okay, yeah, I've got a website. It's Jason Offutt, JASONOFFUTT.com. I've got all sorts of fun stuff. I've got links to all my books. I've got not just paranormal titles. I've got a few humor titles and some novels that I've written. Also have contact information if you want to get a hold of me. I've got a blog up there. I don't update as much as I should, but anyway, I've got a lot of stuff on the website. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if you want to hit me up there.
Well, you are a man of many motifs. I don't know if that's quite the right word, but what's your next Bigfoot adventure or your next monster hunt?
Well, I guess I'm not going to be doing Momo for a couple of years. I've always wanted to write a book on Momo, and I was beaten to it. So I'll wait a couple of years and maybe tackle that.
Well, there's a lot of other creatures and monsters out there to be had, and we will be having them from time to time here, Tim, on Exploring the Bizarre. And once again, thank you for your insights on some of the greatest creatures of all time.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre.